President of Sierra Leone has appealed for an increase in foreign investment at a conference in London. The West African country suffered for nearly a decade as a civil war raged in the 1990s. Meanwhile, the former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, who was also at the conference, says that Sierra Leone is making progress. I sat down with Mr. Blair and with David Carew, the Sierra Leonean Trade Minister. A question for the Minister first. How is it that investors now see the country as a good bet?
I think they believe more in the quality of governance. They believe in the security that we have been able to portray. They also believe in the fact that there are opportunities. They just want to hear it again and again.
So on that point, you've got the resource base of industry and economy, but you now have to convince people that not only the reforms are taking place, but that they were sustainable.
Our reforms have been tracked. We are not just doing things, people are watching us. There's Transparency International, there's the Mo Ibrahim Index, and they have seen that we are doing the right things.
One of the things that always worries me whenever I hear of economies based on resources, diamonds, oils, minerals, is that it is a breeding ground for corruption unless there are the most stringent reforms in place.
We've heard about that too, but what we have done since we changed the government is that we have enacted the most stringent anti-corruption legislation, and we've allowed it to work. We've got a commission that has enough power to prosecute any offender.
How can investors be assured that money that goes in today it'll certainly provide returns in the future, but that it's safe?
Now, these investors are people who will demand the best, will demand a transparent process, and the President is prepared to give his own personal time, as well as ministers like David, in order to make sure they're properly looked after.
I challenge that they care about transparency. I challenge that, Mr. Blair. Is it not a case that in many cases they just see a gold pot and or a honey pot and they want to get their paw into it?
I think the people that they're trying to attract here in Sierra Leone now are not like that. And there's one thing that we've learned about investment in Africa over time. If it comes in the wrong way, in a corrupt or untransparent process, it doesn't last for the country or indeed for the investor. So what they're trying to do now, and the reason they signed up to the Extractive Industries Transparency Initiative, is precisely to make sure that, for example, when they privatize their port, which they're doing, it's one of the finest deep-sea ports in the world, potentially, they are going to do it in a completely open way.
Do you feel a special interest towards Sierra Leone? I mean, not just because of your own Africa initiatives, but, of course, you did... I mean, in government, you sent troops. In peace or out of government, you bring investors.
Yeah, actually, we needed to do both. Does
that create a special relationship for you with the country?
For sure. Also, actually, my father taught in Sierra Leone back in the 1960s, so I always had a feeling for Sierra Leone. But the single thing that's most important for me is I think we are at a moment where investors, as I go around the world, investors, I think, are looking at Africa differently. They are prepared to come in and invest. There are funds being established to invest in Africa. There's a sense that maybe there are opportunities there that could be developed. And, you know, we'll wait and see. But I think the turnout today, and these were serious people, as I say, from major funds, from sovereign wealth funds, from banks, from private equity institutions, from individual companies. A lot of them there's a far bigger turnout for today's investment conference than for tomorrow's donor conference, which in my view is quite a good sign.
The former British Prime Minister Tony Blair, along with Sierra Leone's Trade Minister. Now, as we take a look